So, first off, hi, I'm Effie. This week I am visiting family, and I feel like usually I read a lot less when I visit family. My reading's been all over the place this year anyway, but I'm particularly interested to see how much I managed to get read in this week that I'm away. So it is currently Wednesday morning, and we are returning next Wednesday morning. We have a long journey in each direction, and I'm going to guess that's when I'm going to get most of my reading done, but then sometimes I can't focus and I'll just put something on my Kindle and watch stuff on the way down. Ideally, I think I've got 6 books that I need to finish this week. I've also got Thorns from the Fall that is still ongoing. So the 6 titles are The Elrian Code, which I need to finish by the 30th because I am scheduled to have an Instagram post on that day. The Witch Who Chases the Sun, which doesn't come out till later in the year, but the author has asked that reviews are up by the start of July, so ideally I'd like to get that read sooner rather than later, but it is quite chunky. I think it's almost 700 pages. And then what else? There's Love and Other Atrocities, and I'm trying to think of the other 3. Tenderly I Am Devoured, Sweet Heat, and I can't remember the last one. I'll insert a clip here of what that 6th title is, and if there's more than 6 titles, So that is my hope. Am I gonna actually get them read? I don't know. I also am taking multiple books down the road with me because of course I am. So I'm taking Twice Bound, Volatile Memory, and The Haunting of William Thorne, in addition to my copy of The Elrian Code. And I'm taking my copy of Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, which I've already read. So that's not a book I'm taking to read whilst I'm down the road. It's just I want to have my copy with me. It sounds like it's my emotional support book, but part of the reason, well, the main reason we're going down the road, aside from to visit family, is we're going to the Schwab event in Manchester on Saturday. But I have yapped quite enough, so I guess probably the next time you see me will be with an update on what I've managed to read, presumably on the journey down the road. So it's Monday, and I'm not going to say things haven't gone exactly as planned, because honestly, I have read about as much as I anticipated getting read this week. I love visiting my family, but I feel like I've had virtually no time to myself, which again is fine. Oh, I forgot something. So I went through and looked at how much I have read so far whilst I've been down, and I completely forgot one of the things. So I will pause right here. Okay, so as I was saying before, I distracted myself by remembering something. You see family, you want to spend time with them, you want to have conversations with them. So that is not inherently an issue with, not having a moment to myself. It's a case of like, if I don't get time to myself, like especially with something like reading, because like, even if you can read with stuff going on in the background, like if you are actively in a conversation with someone, maybe there are people that can be conversing with someone and fully immersed in that conversation and also reading a book, but that most certainly is not me. So I haven't had much of a chance to get some reading done. I will just run down on the figures. So Wednesday, which was a travel day, and I thought I was going to get more read that day, I actually ended up editing on the train down, so didn't get so much read that day. So I read 3 pages of Twice Bound, and I read 4 pages of The Elrian Code. On Thursday, I read 2 pages of Twice Bound and 15 pages of The Elrian Code. Friday, 7 pages. Saturday, which was the day I went to see Schwab for their tour for Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, I managed to get 56 pages of Priest read and 10 pages of the Illyrian Code. And the reason the numbers were higher that day was because we went into the city centre a bit early. So B and I are very good at just doing our own thing, recharging individual social batteries. We're very good at sitting in silence together. So only that's why the page numbers were so high. And then yesterday, I read 31 pages of Priest, which most of that was before I fell asleep. So I went to bed like just after midnight, so I was reading before falling asleep, and that's why that number is what it is. And then I read 22 pages of When the Wind Blows, which is a graphic novel, so obviously it's going to read a bit quicker. So that's my reading. And yeah, the reason I haven't popped in earlier was I also haven't had chance to pop in for an update. Not that I really would have much to say in terms of an update. I'm not far enough into Twicebound to have any real opinions. I am loving Priest. It's somehow different than I expected, even though the prologue is like literally starts with 6 months ago, I broke my vows on the altar of my own church. This is my confession. Like, even though it starts that way, it's still quite different than I expected it to be. And then I'm really enjoying the Illyrian Code. I feel like I'm not far enough in to have any real thoughts and opinions, but I'm loving the characters that we met so far, and the very complex world building that we've got, but it's not so complex that I'm feeling lost by it all. I think that's everything. Oh, When the Wind Blows, I believe, is a reread. I think I read it as a child, so this is me just reading it for the first time as an adult, and it's so poignant and I'm really enjoying it as well. So whilst I may not be getting much reading done, I'm getting quality reading in because the things I'm reading I'm actually enjoying so very much. I'm back home from my trip visiting my family this past week, so I figured I would get you up to speed with what I've read the last couple of days. I'm realising now I think I actually last updated on Monday, which wow, I've just lost track of days apparently. So I'll give like a full breakdown of like day by day and then overall at the end of this video. But essentially, I think I've read a few more pages of the Illyrian Code, like since I last updated, the only time I updated. I've subsequently finished When the Wind Blows. I think it was like I got most of it done yesterday and then just finished it up before falling asleep tonight. I'm not a time traveller this morning, and I have thoughts, but we'll come back to that. Then I started and finished volume 1 of The Wicked and the Divine because I watched the live stream of Schwab's Edinburgh event on Monday evening, and like I've really enjoyed like getting into theories and stuff with my dad about Bury Our Bones because I popped it on the TV and like we watched the live stream together, and now we're just like we both desperately need a reread of Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and like we've come up with some theories because one of the things is, even though it's in third, they're all unreliable narrators, and with that context you begin to doubt everything you think you know. And especially with like some of the theories we've got, we want to go back, read them and see if like our theories are supported, but also if we can pick up some different nuances, like knowing that not everything is necessarily what it seems. So excited. I don't know when I'm going to squeeze in a reread of bury our bones, but I know I will. So yeah, I picked up volume 1 of The Wicked and the Divine, and I think I'm going to continue with this series. I think I'm going to buy the bind up of the whole series. I think it's 9 volumes. So I've read like a ninth of it, and actually, like, it was really enjoyable, but also very shocking and kind of ripped my heart out a bit. And that's only volume 1. So we'll see. I also really need to go back and read Die. Like, so I've read issue 1, so not even the first volume. I've read issue 1 of Die. And I think, yeah, because there's 20 in total, which I thought was a really cool idea, that this is like centered around a Dungeons and Dragons adjacent game. And there's 20 volumes. No, not 20 volumes, 20 issues. Is it 20 volumes or 20 issues? I think it's 20 issues because like you often use a D20 in that kind of game. So, thoughts on When the Wind Blows. And I'm just going to like keep referring to my notes that I made last night because like I need to have it clear in my head, but I think like my phone and my microphone were elsewhere, so I couldn't immediately record. So despite knowing where the story was headed, or at least having a vague outline of the likely conclusion, when I finished the book, I just had to sit and stare into space because it is utterly, like, soul-destroyingly devastating. Like, it's deeply uncomfortable to know that this book was first published over 40 years ago, and it feels like it could be set now. So there's an element of the story where these characters have experienced previous world wars. Like, they've at least experienced the Second World War and were involved in, the wartime effort, wartime spirit. So possibly we wouldn't get that. Like, it'd be very hard to get that same sense if it was set now. But in terms of the wider context, I definitely feel like it's something that could, like, you could change tiny things and make it apply now, but the overall story, it feels like we've moved nowhere in the past 40 years. Maybe that's just cynical, but as someone who watched trigger warning for 9/11, as someone who watched the South Tower go down, because as I came home from, I think it was school, as I came home from school, the North Tower had just, assuming I'm getting this the right way around, the North Tower had been hit and fallen, and like as many of my generation, like, I'm not unique. It was broadcast on the news after all. Yeah, like, it was live broadcast, it going down, and then like I remember I have such vivid memories of like the politicians and the lies they told and the way they used it to facilitate their illegal actions in the Middle East. And like seeing that history repeating right now, like the language might be slightly different. Like, we're not using weapons of mass destruction anymore, but like it's the same lies we were told 20 years ago. But how old would I have been? So 2011, I would have been 10 years old, like just 10, because my birthday's in August. So less than a month after I turned 10, this all happened, and then, all the lies from the politicians. And I remember being absolutely terrified as a 10, 11-year-old, like pre-teen, that this was going to be the start of World War III, and being aware, or at least like whether I was like fully aware of the existence of nuclear weapons at that age, being aware that like the first two wars were absolutely devastating, and like World War III could just be the end. Like, I'm trying to work out if I would have been aware of nuclear weapons, because as a lot of British kids did, and probably still do. I think I probably read like every horrible history book that was available at the time. So I don't think it's entirely outside the realm of possibility that whilst I may not have had the full scope of what a nuclear weapon truly meant, I would have been aware of what nuclear weapons were, especially now that I think about it, like knowing about the Second World War and knowing what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So I, it's hard in retrospect to know if I explicitly was scared of nuclear weapons, but I was definitely scared of a World War III. But anyway, this is all to say that, whilst that was 20 years ago, that's still 20 years after this book came out. Also, if I'm saying like I would have been aware of these things, I'm also pretty sure this was a reread for me. I don't think I remembered anything, but I'm pretty sure I'd actually originally read it as a child. So, that's another element of like I probably was aware of these things and it fed into the fear. But yeah, it's just maddening that in a lot of ways it feels like nothing's changed and this book could have been set right now and not very much would have to change about it. I felt like the true magic of this story was what we didn't see, because this is a very close story. We follow Mr. and Mrs. Bloggs from start to finish, with the exception of 3 double page spreads, which make it abundantly clear that what they believe to be happening is happening. I don't know if this is a story that has like a, a blurb as such. The edition I read, it didn't have a blurb. It had I don't know if it was the exact like Rockabye Baby, When the Wind Blows, Cradle, that one. I think it just had like that, and then it had like a couple of panels from the book, and the middle panel was what you would think of like very stereotypically when you think of like a nuclear warhead type. I'm being vague because I think it's one of those books that like you go in, you kind of vaguely know something to do with nuclear weapons, like a nuclear war, but you don't know the fine details, and that adds to the overall impact. So, with the exception of those 3 pages, you are solely from the perspective of Mr. and Mrs. Bloggs, and that makes them unreliable narrators because you only know as much as they know. So there's so much that is never explicitly stated in this book, but you feel like the horrors are just beyond your eyesight. You can make inferences about the conclusions that should and shouldn't be made. And I loved that it was so quiet in saying something so loud. And I think the final thing I'll say on this book was that now that I've read or reread both Ethel and Ernest and When the Wind Blows, I think that's where Briggs really excels. It's these intimate stories of a couple. Well, it's couples in both books. These intimate stories of couples that are set against a much larger background where it's commenting on something. Like they are so character driven, but at the same time, there's a message and a story behind them. On to happier things. I decided to pick up Sweet Heat. I was about 15% in and I paused it. And I was able to pick up from the 15% mark. My plan was to read it on the train, and I did read some, but I feel like I get over optimistic about how much I'll read on a train because for a variety of reasons, including the fact that I just don't focus on my books in that kind of way when I'm traveling. I did not get that much done. I really love Sweet Heat. So if you don't know, Sweet Heat is kind of the sequel to Honey and Spice. So Honey and Spice ended on a happy finale, and in Sweet Heat, the characters are no longer together. And I believe this is a second chance romance between them. I was immediately sucked back in as soon as I picked up the book, because Babalola has this very evocative style of writing that is also feels familiar. It feels like you are being invited into this friend group, and there's this beautiful poetic feel to the prose that just makes it so engaging. I love Kiki and Malachi. I can't wait to read more of this story. But my point was, I got 7% read on the whole of my journey. My journey was about 7 hours. Like there was 6.5, was it? Let's say 6.5 with like a roughly 40-minute break in the middle. So you're talking about I had about 6 hours on the train in like a 3 and a 3, I think it was, or close enough. But getting 7% read of this book that's almost 500 pages means I read a grand total of 35 pages in 6 hours. I really don't read on trains. I think to myself I'm going to read on trains, and then I don't. And I actually think I might not pick up anything more to read tonight. Like, I will check back in one last time, probably tomorrow morning if I'm honest, and let you know where I should get to if I get more of Sweet Heat read. But like, I'm not making any promises because I kind of just want to watch some trashy TV or something, because my time is my own. Like, I love and present as well as past tense visiting my family, but I didn't get much time to myself. So the idea that my time is my own is very enticing at the moment. So I don't know if I'll get any more read tonight, but I'll definitely come back with like, day by day breakdowns of what I managed to read, and then also an overall breakdown of what I managed to read over this 8-day period of time. So it's the next day, as I said. Firstly, I apologise if the audio's not great. I forgot to grab my mic, so fingers crossed it's okay. I, as predicted, didn't read any more of Sweet Heat yesterday, as I feel like I often want to point out that it's not a comment at all on Sweet Heat. It's just that the headspace I was in, I just wanted to watch rubbish, so that's what I did. So before I sign off for this week's video, I guess like first thing is, I don't know, this video went pretty much as I expected. I think I had anticipated reading a bit more on the trains there and back, but in terms of what I actually managed to read whilst I was down the road, yeah, pretty much what I thought. It feels like a failure, but that's putting a value weight on a thing that shouldn't have a value weight. It's just the exact purpose of this video was to see how much I would read in this specific context, and we now know. Thankfully, I think at least my next vlog is not going to have any kind of, I mean, it's not even a gimmick, but like, it's literally just going to be I'm trying to read some books. So that should go a bit better. Let's run through the stats of what I read each day. So on the first Wednesday, I read 5 pages of the Illyrian Code and 3 pages of Twice Bound, so a total of 8 pages. On Thursday, I read 7 pages of the Illyrian Code and 2 pages of Twice Bound, so a total of 9 pages. On Friday, I read 7 pages of the Illyrian Code, so that was just 7 pages for Friday. Saturday, I read 10 pages of the Illyrian Code and 56 pages of Priest, so that was a total of 66 pages. Sunday, 31 pages of Priest, 22 pages of When the Wind Blows, so 53 pages total. On Monday, I read 9 pages of the Illyrian Code, so that was another total of 9 pages. Tuesday, When the Wind Blows, I read 18 pages of, and I read 104 pages of The Wicked and the Divine, Volume 1, The Faust Act. So that was a total of 122 pages. And then on the second Wednesday, I read 35 pages of Sweet Heat, 8 pages of When the Wind Blows, and 72 pages of The Wicked and the Divine. So that was a total of 115 pages. So in total, I read 389 pages over this 8-day period, which averages out to about 49 pages a day, which I think is pretty impressive because the vast majority of the days I read under 10 pages. I guess it all balances out, doesn't it? I mean, the 2 books I did finish were graphic novels, but graphic novels are just as valid. And, you know, as we saw, When the Wind Blows was so impactful for me. So yeah, just a fun fact that like over 200 of the pages that I read were in graphic novel format, which, you know, due to the structure and formatting of them, oftentimes will read quicker than a book where it's just blocks of text. But I think that's everything. I will see you next time. As I say, my next vlog is just going to be, you know, I have these books I would like to read. Let's read them and see what I think. Until next time, love you. And you can find me deep in the marginalia.